If you are starting a vertical farm and don't know where to begin or which technology would suit your needs, then reach out to the experts at Cultivated. As indoor farm brokers, they help connect you to the right technology and ensure your project is successful. Best of all, their service is free because they work on behalf of their partners. Visit cultivated.com to learn more. And that's spelled cultivatd.com, or click the link in the show notes.
We constantly discuss with a team, where's our biggest impact? One of it was like, okay, are we making a difference on the carbon side of things? And answering very strongly, we saw that it wasn't the main thing, right? So the main thing is people and water. How do we hone in on that? And being like very aggressive in a way, or sincere in terms of what we want to build and where our impact lies. Always trying to come back to the why and articulate it with what we're building.
Welcome to the Vertical Farming Podcast, weekly conversations with fascinating CEOs, founders, and agtech visionaries. Join us every week as we dive deep into the world of vertical farming with your host, Harry Duran.
Vertical Farming Podcast, Season 7. Regular listeners, welcome back. Some of you who I met at Indoor AgCon this past week. So exciting, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. If this is your first time listening, for sure you are in the right place because you're looking for interviews with fascinating CEOs and founders of the leading vertical farming companies from around the world, and this is the show for you. I'm your host, Harry Duran. In case you missed last week's episode, I spoke with my fellow ag podcaster, Trevor Williams, and we explored the latest trends happening in ag and ag tech. Trevor was nice enough to reach out, and we covered topics ranging from vertical farming and regenerative agriculture to cellular agriculture and food production for space exploration. On Farm Traveler, Trevor interviews farmers, ranchers, and entrepreneurs from around the world as they provide his listeners with valuable insights and education about the industry. It was a great opportunity to talk a little podcast shop and share some stories about the wonderful conversations we've been having on the show. This week, I speak with Emiliano Gutierrez of Raiz Farms. In this episode, Emiliano shares his entrepreneurial journey of creating a sustainable food system through vertical farming. He discusses his vision for using solar energy, LEDs, blockchain, and yes, NFTs to transform the way we think about growing food. He shares his personal experiences of building a business from the ground up and the challenges and opportunities that come with it. He also talks about his plans for leveraging blockchain and other technologies to power a decentralized food system. This one's a must listen if you're interested in startups, agriculture, global solutions, or anyone interested in becoming a change agent for a better planet. I think we've got it all covered here. Thanks again to the folks who send in reviews for last episode. It was really nice to read those out. Along those lines, it wasn't necessarily a review, but I did have several people come up to me at Indoor AgCon. One of them, as I opened the doors to the elevator on my hotel floor, Sheldon, nice to meet you in person. And coincidentally enough, the way things work, I ended up bumping into him again online for some breakfast the next day. So small world indeed. But at the conference, got to meet not only past guests, but also current listeners of the show, which really warmed my heart. I was at a session with David Farquhar and Peter Sellew and was able to ask a question and mention that I was the host of the Vertical Farming Podcast. And it turned out to be a good thing because I had several people come up to me afterwards. Given that my face is not that prominent anywhere on the show, they were happy to get a chance to say hi and tell me how much of a fan they are of the show. And some of them have listened to a lot of the episodes. So to all of those that I've met there in person, to all of those that I'm going to meet at a future vertical farming conference, thank you so much. It really warmed my heart, and it makes me happy to continue to work hard to make sure we get these episodes out for you each and every week and share these wonderful stories. Special thanks to Suzanne, Brian, and the entire Indoor AgCon team for creating a wonderful event. This is their 10th year. They doubled the attendance of last year, and all the sessions were great, and the conversations were just as good. I even had an opportunity to visit, through an event organized by Indoor AgCon, the local food deserts in downtown Las Vegas, and that was a wonderful, eye-opening, sometimes sad experience to see the current conditions of having fresh food available to folks in lower income neighborhoods. But I was excited by the work of the folks at Green Side Up and some other folks I'll be having on the show to talk about what they're doing to leverage vertical farming to make fresh produce more readily available for these communities, and that definitely warmed my heart. It was not something I knew was there when I arrived, and I was happy to see it on the program and grateful that I was able to squeeze in on the shuttle bus for that trip, which was definitely worth it. As you might imagine, I met not only past guests who are coming back for a round 2 or maybe 3, but also new CEOs, new connections, new companies, and it'll be fun to get those queued up for next season. Okay, before we jump into this uninterrupted conversation with Emiliano, here are a few words from the folks that support this show. And by the way, if you're interested in being one of the sponsors, reach out to me as we have space coming up both this season and next. This year, Vertifarm takes place from September 26th through September 28th at the Exhibition Center in Dortmund, Germany. For those new to Vertifarm, it's the most significant trade fair for next-level farming and new food systems. Their international platform is set to showcase the latest developments in innovative controlled production systems for vegetables, salad crops, herbs, and microgreens, as well as sustainable fish, insect breeding, fruit cultivation, and medicinal plants. Vertifarm is shaping the future of vertical farming and new food systems. Reserve your ticket and learn more at vertifarm.de. That's vertifarm.de. So Emiliano Gutierrez, CEO and co-founder of Raiz Farms, thank you for joining me on the Vertical Farming Podcast.
Thanks to you, Harry. It's a pleasure to be here. Honored.
So where is home for you? Where are you calling in from?
So home is Lisbon at the moment, Lisbon, Portugal.
How long have you been there?
Around 2 years now. So
Okay.
yeah, we launched the company 2021. I actually lived here in 2017, fell in love with the city, the ecosystem, and everything that was going on. But that was 6 months. So yeah, hitting 2 years now, a bit more.
Haven't been to Portugal, heard a lot of good things about it, specifically Lisbon. I've been to Spain, been to Madrid and Barcelona. So for people that have not been, how would you describe the city?
Yeah, amazing. Totally recommend it. Sunny when it's sunny. Right now it's actually raining a bit, but they call it Sun Lisbon. It's great weather overall, amazing food, quite accessible, good people, and most importantly, I would say it's a rising startup ecosystem for all things startup, sustainability, Web3, etc. So it's a great place to be.
And where are you originally from?
Originally from Mexico,
Okay.
born and raised in TJ, Tijuana, Baja California.
Okay. What was growing up in Tijuana like?
Fun, I would say. It's bicultural, right? So
Yeah.
we have the California influence, but of course it's Mexico, and it's like the first city in the country from north to south. So it was challenging in the sense of trying to create something and trying to always expand, but it was also fun, and I would say a lucky child, blessed by great parents as well, that always pushed me towards learning and growing. So that's something I totally appreciate.
It must be an interesting dynamic growing up in Tijuana because you have, arguably what is the most attractive, alluring, successful, biggest country, depending how you want to measure it, right there, so close. And I'm wondering, growing up, what that was like, as you were growing up and you were in school, we were in college. And I remember I grew up a little bit, not that similar, but I grew up just outside New York City. So if you look at a map, it's Manhattan, the Bronx, and then Yonkers, which is the city where I grew up. But I remember like I had New York City in my sort of like in my backyard. I could see like the Empire State Building from some places in Yonkers because it's got a lot of hills. And I was just like, I got to get there. So I'm curious if that was like the same feeling for you.
Totally get it. I've been to New York and also Yonkers, but in terms of TJ, I mean, it does happen, and I think it's something commonly known in certain circles in Mexico, and especially Baja. We used to go a lot, right? So funnily enough, we call it el otro lado, or the other side, and you go to el otro lado every weekend or so. And of course, there's always the option of studying there if you want, or the family wants it, etc. And it's an interesting and I would say challenging thing for both myself and families choosing to go there or to get the double nationality, etc. I would say, the advantage of being able to go often, to have family over there, both in California and New York, and get the exposure. I'll share more further ahead, but actually worked for a couple of programs on entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley and in New York. But as a child, you get to see both worlds, and I would say that that also influences of what you want to create further ahead, right? So I always had that well ingrained of in terms of what is possible and what's driving innovation, for example, in California and Silicon Valley. So it was something ingrained that I've been trying to reach or adapt, right? So it's pros and cons, but definitely something that made me learn in the early days and still does.
You mentioned New York, you mentioned Silicon Valley. So I get the sense, we can move now into your university days. Like, did a lot of that color or influence, how you started to think about what you wanted to study, what you wanted to learn more about?
Definitely, definitely. I think it did. Funny you mentioned I thought about it that way, but yeah, I always felt the thrill to create, to do something of my own and to innovate in one way or another to make an impact. And that did affect my college choice and education, especially what I pursued. I studied business, right? So it was, in a way, what I thought gave me certain tools to build without necessarily knowing from the get-go what I wanted to build, right? But I felt that I had the tools and also the programs and context to be able to make things happen, right? But thinking back, it did feel like having that vicinity with Silicon Valley and with New York, et cetera, where things are happening, right? And where arguably still most or quite a bit of innovation is happening. I think that did play a role into shaping, let's say, my aspirations in a way.
Did you say family? Your family in New York?
Yeah, yeah, I'm in Brooklyn.
Okay. What part of Brooklyn?
It's the Graw Street. So I would say, well, what is it?
Carroll Gardens?
Carroll Gardens
Yeah, I think so.
around that
Yeah.
side. Yeah, nice area. I always love to walk around it. And actually, yeah, my first experience, I guess we'll get into that, but my first experience with vertical farming or CEA was actually in New York City as well. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, definitely opened the doors and my eyes to new realms of possibilities.
What were some of the early entrepreneurial ventures you started?
Yeah, of course, from the mythical selling lemonade in TJ when I was a kid or
Okay.
other stuff, right? But I would say like most prominently events, doing like high school, etc. I was doing crazy events. Funnily enough, we did a La Cuba más grande del mundo. We did like the world's biggest Cuba Libre after this crazy film that appeared. We hired an actor that was very popular at the moment in Mexico, and it was a wild success, went viral. So that was like, yeah, just making it happen and just assuring that the things could be made and were successful. So yeah, that was like a prominent one and something that just yeah pushed me towards creating more and generating more content for people.
And then you started working, you had some time in solar as well. If I looked, I saw some of that on LinkedIn also.
Yeah, a couple of things in solar. One of them was with Bright Solar. They're Silicon Valley startup working in Mexico mostly, in Latam, but that was just a brief period as an ambassador helping position solar panels with residential. Then I went on my own in terms of creating a concept for decentralized energy resources to generate renewable energy credits and be able to plug into the market, which is usually restricted to bigger players. And we did a pilot also with the university in LATAM with Energy Web Foundation. And that actually was another touch point with vertical farming, as we also needed on the demand side high energy consumers or people that could potentially generate their own energy. And as we know, energy is one key piece of the vertical farming equation, right? So yeah, happy to share a bit more about that. And finally, in terms of the solar, I had a season working in the solar industry in Australia. That was 2020 or so, also like doing consulting and residential and commercial sales of energy. So that was also a good approach in terms of that field.
So talk to me a little bit about mindset. Obviously, given what we've already heard so far, you're definitely one for adventure and one for traveling. So tell me the story about how you end up in Australia.
Yeah, so Australia, I would say a couple of things. Yeah, totally adventure and travel and creation. Australia was actually a joint decision, I would say, of my partner, my girlfriend, and myself. She actually led the way by studying there her master's in uni Melbourne. I was just finishing college and working on some side projects. And I knew that like Australia was big for energy and also lifestyle and everything. So for me, it was a no-brainer, right? Following the heart, but also like being able to work on an industry that I was passionate about and that was like world leading on that side, which it was at the moment in terms of the country and hydropower, solar, etc. So yeah, I was quick enough to make the call and go there, of course, with all the logistics and bureaucratic issues attached. But I've seen that that's something that, yeah, can be solved. And as always, where there's a will, there's a way. So yeah, we made it happen in late 2019, early 2020.
Talk about timing.
Yeah, I know.
There's some stuff happening in early 2020. So how did that like? It's so funny how many people thought they knew what 2020 was going to be in like January and February, and and especially with travel, I'm wondering what your experience was like as everything was happening.
Totally. And Australia was one of the first places to be hit in a way, or to like have that coming in from Asia, right? So it was interesting. Totally a change of possibilities, a change of mindset in terms of what you could do or could not. Like Australia was also quite rough on the measures it took. I think they did well, at least in the beginning, to do so, and it was quite clear what you couldn't do. Thankfully, I had this job with the energy side of things, and I could do remote working. So that was great. And I had been doing remote working since, I would say, 2018. So that was also a bit advantages in my side. And to be honest, yeah, I took the time to go deeper into a couple of things, both the energy side, but also that's when I started going deeper into vertical farming, right? Yeah, I had the time. I had the you had a laptop, right? You have access to millions of files, things to do research on. So, yeah, luckily enough, I think I used the time well to start building and start going deeper into the matter.
Something else it looks like you went deeper into is blockchain.
Yeah.
And so all these things, we're going to try to bring everything back together. But like, how did that interest start? Because it looks like 2019, according to, what I saw. But talk about where that curiosity started for you.
Absolutely. I think that started in Lisbon in 2017 with, like people friends talking about it, both on the core principles of decentralization and distributed technology and traceability, which was quite interesting on the beginning, also at a philosophical level. But of course, also all the rage with the ICOs and what everything was going on, and the bull run was just starting. So it was like still very attractive and interesting. And then I just went to the rabbit hole, both. Yeah, I think it's been three major rabbit holes during these last couple of years. One of them is blockchain, another is energy, and of course, vertical farming. And yes, we'll totally intertwine them together. But yeah, that started with good friends telling me about it, reading white papers, going deeper into projects. And then back in Mexico, that was in Lisbon, I was doing an exchange and also working with a couple of projects over here. When I came back to Mexico, I started this blockchain developer lab called Blockchain Devs, where we trained developers and engineers just on the basics of blockchain technology, smart contracts, first leveraging Ethereum, which was the best, or not the best, but the most developed language initially, or protocol like Solidity, and just doing partnerships with different programs, different initiatives, all the way from centralized finance to energy to just core blockchain technology. And I've kept interested on it since then, sometimes more than others, like collaborating with different projects on that. And until we reached the point, I stepped back a bit while focusing on Raiz, and I guess we'll get there. But yeah, funnily enough, one thing led to another, and right now we're also like developing a solid component integrating blockchain and vertical farming.
So many exciting industries and things that are really top of mind for a lot of folks. So it must be hard, to kind of go down one. I can definitely relate. I always am the type of person. I used to call it chasing shiny objects, but now I think it's just like passions and interests, and I've accepted the fact that I'm going to have a lot of passions and I'm going to have a lot of interests, and I think it's just a matter of finding the time. I'm going down like a Chat GPT AI rabbit hole now, so that's been like
Yeah.
what's happening there is moving. Talk about stuff that's moving exponentially fast. So it's really interesting to see how it's all coming together and how it's all helping us. When used properly and put to good use. There's people that like hear the term Web3 or hear the term blockchain or hear the term NFT and just immediately roll their eyes and just be like, oh, that's a hype. And I think understanding the best parts of all these tools, I think, and knowing how to put them to use, I think is going to be a valuable skill set going forward. So I definitely applaud your curiosity.
Thank you. Thank you. No, and yes, totally relate there. But I think it's about like compounding knowledge and compounding context, all right? So as you said, it's exponential growing trends. So if we can match them and both with what you want to build and the passions, as you mentioned, with what's going on in the world out there, right? You can compound those interests and knowledge and yeah, infrastructure that you potentially have built, and then intersect between those, right? So yeah, it's very exciting, as you say. And yeah, it takes time, right? And I think one thing there, I guess, for the audience, it's good that going into these rabbit holes, but I think it should also be met with some kind of consistency, right? It's not just like it shouldn't be just a fad and then go, but it's like, okay, if we can like build serious knowledge there and then create a tool set that we can apply to different projects, as you said, can be very valuable for their head.
Out of curiosity, what's the equivalent in Spanish for rabbit hole?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Because it's not like Oyo de Conejo, but I mean, there's got to be some other phrase that talks about like just like this Alice in Wonderland, like going
Absolutely,
down.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one of the disadvantages of being born and raised in TJ, the Spanglish, man.
Yeah.
You find yourself speaking English a lot of times, but yeah, I'll give it a think for sure.
So, okay, let's moving closer and closer to present day. I do have just one question. Like, if I was to ask your parents or your family if this was something in you that you're always curious, always wanting to learn more, would they say that this has been something that's obvious, that this was a trend for you?
Maybe yes, maybe yes. I think definitely in terms of the curiosity of different fields and different like facets of myself and of just life as a whole, I think they would point out to different sports that I wanted to try out and different kinds of people that I wanted to hang out with, right? From all kinds of people and all kinds of knowledge. I always thought like people and things have so much to teach us, so better not to just like be square-minded, but just I think there's a lot to learn and a lot to be gained and acquired from different sides. So maybe yes, they would say yes.
So of all the passions and all the things that were starting to interest you and get on your radar, what was it specifically about Vertical Farms that had you more focused and decide that this is going to be the next project for you?
Yes, so it was again like 2020, and actually there was a lack of produce in the supermarkets. At least that happened to me in Australia, right? So there was that rising need, which was very tangible. And yeah, I had been talking about it since like 2016, 2017, but not really taking action. I just like going a bit more on the theoretical side. But once that hit, and I saw, for example, on the energy side, that vertical farms were also like having that hard time in terms of energy sourcing and like the OPEX coming out of energy. I thought I had the knowledge, or at least the perspective, to be able to make it differently and to make it work. And it was also something very actionable, right? That I thought we could move forward with and validate and launch to market. So I felt I had the right expertise, or at least the right perspective, to be able to tackle it in a different manner and actually make something worthwhile that could be made different and take it to market effectively. And yeah, vertical farming and, let's say, value added products and local food was something that was on the radar, and that I as a client or customer was looking for, and that I also validated with other potential clients and users. That was something that they were looking for, right? So it was something tangible, effective, that I knew we could make happen. So that's also why I said, let's go.
So, how do you start an initiative like this? It's yeah, obviously you've had experience with some of the businesses you worked in before, but this is your first time as a CEO, right?
It is. It is.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm curious about your mindset and how you put together a plan of action, and talk about that first year, how you build a team, how you think about, what your offering is going to be, and, just product market fit and all that stuff. Because, a lot of the things that, new CEOs and starting a business, really give some thought to.
Absolutely. No, it is, I would say, an evolving process. And I think we should always be looking for a refining product market fit, and always in constant interaction with the client and the user. But to answer your question, in the first year, I actually met my CTO, Simon, in Silicon Valley 2018 while I was running this entrepreneurship bootcamp in partnership with Berkeley. And we had already dabbled with the idea of building something of sorts. Again, I had already been in New York with this, it was Sky Vegetables, also like in partnership in a way with Agritecture in this program. So I had this idea of how it could be done, but definitely reached back out to Simon, and we knew we wanted to create something. So it's also, I would say, first the team, the people, then leveraging existing network. I would say it's something critical. Like first going deeper on my own in terms of, okay, what do I see there is a gap for in the market, right? Or what can be built? In this case, it was energy efficient farming, right? Because it was obvious that that was one of the main, let's say, value adds that I could bring to the table, and that also was something critical in the industry. And I would say it still is, right? So first it was like honing in on that. Expanding the team, I would say, was and still is something that we are doing, and constantly attracting talent. And I see vertical farming and the new food system, or a decentralized food system, which is our vision, as something that is really empowering for people and attractive for people to join, right? So I think people are constantly looking to give to solid causes and to have an impact. So it's been, I would say, not easy, but easier to bring on board talented people to join the cause and join the mission, right? Because it's something that people believe in. And once you see, for example, a full harvest, it's something amazing, right? So just to come back to the first year of operations, or at least of mindset building and structure. First, I met with Simon again, then Stefano, who was first taking part as head grower. He had ran a microgreen business in Vienna. We had met in Vienna in 2019, and we kept in touch. And it was like already creating something that was feasible to launch. Then I came to Lisbon in October 2020 just to validate the market. And I would say here, a personal thing, but also something that has driven me forward. After Australia, I came to Europe. I came to Italy for a personal matter that my girlfriend had medical treatments to go through, important ones. So I knew I wanted to be by her side, or at least not as far as Mexico and Italy, right? She's Italian and she's better now, thank God. But that was also, I think, a catalyst for me to really take action and say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this in Europe, and we're going to do it, and push me for excellence and push me for quality, because that was like also something deeper at stake, right? So that's something that I know that is valuable for me, and that I encourage also other people to find, like, what's that inner drive, right? And for me, like, beyond that, I mean, what we're doing, I also have a vision of being able to take this to where it matters most, to people that are effectively famishing, right? And that's still happening, but we'll get there. We'll get there. In terms of, that's, I would say, to pair it up, having a strong why is key, right? And then through that strong why, people will start to appear and join it, right? So just coming back to the story, I came to Portugal, met my next co-founder, was Aiden. We met through an MBA network we were doing together. He was part of an agricultural startup here in Lisbon, but also looking for something new and exciting. So the four of us kicked it off. And we started effectively, like, as you said, looking for what was our value proposition, what we were doing, speaking with a lot of customers, speaking with a lot of suppliers, speaking with the restaurants, speaking with final customers, just exploring, right? That's the client discovery phase, the exploration, like really finding what were our core capabilities and what we wanted to build. No, and then more people started engaging. Maria as a biologist, then Lucia as a marketer and operations lead. So yeah, we've been expanding the team and we keep growing. That led us to the phase of piloting, and we piloted in Lisbon in a test chamber with a partner, a Portuguese partner that had set up a bit of a chamber. We set up the system. We started selling crops effectively to the market. We had a great customer response, and I think that's key, right? So first validating the assumptions, because up till the point in which we sold the first plant of red basil or African blue basil. It's a crazy, beautiful basil. That was just an idea, no? But once we validated that, we saw people going really wild and excited once we took, for example, the hydroponic system over there, and we started to teach people around the new way to produce food and even potentially to grow their own food locally and with all the benefits attached to it. So once that started to happen, then we knew that we were onto something and we were building something that people wanted.
What's the current state of the vertical farming market in Portugal?
I would say it's still early stages. We're one of, let's say, 5 most prominent companies over here. There's been a couple of successful ones, but also not so successful ones. We see a couple of projects working more on the engineering side of things, or also just like growing for specific needs, both salads, tomatoes, etc. But we haven't seen or encountered any like strong customer facing brand on that side of things. We know it's fertile ground, it's especially since people are moving more and more over here. So yeah, that's interesting. And we saw it, and also a strategic decision in terms of launching here. We saw it as an almost blank canvas for us to launch and expand and test and then expand throughout Europe and potentially toward across the Atlantic, right? But it was like for us easier to experiment and craft our own image and identity than it was, for example, and if we launched in New York or Berlin, right?
That's helpful to know. And so, for the benefit of the listener who may not know about Raiz, can you describe what your current product offering is, who you're marketing to, and some of what you're offering, and also the nature of the installations that you're doing and the size as well?
Yeah, so we launched our concept farm in July last year, 2022. In terms of the structure, is a one-of-a-kind structure. We're leveraging a hybrid energy model, which means we have our own solar panels, we have natural light and LEDs. So it's 2 containers stacked upon each other. The one on top is, again, translucent with vertically urban LEDs on the backs that allows to provide supplementary LEDs, and on the bottom, so that the growing is on the top and the bottom part is logistics, both germination station, reservoir, and workstations. So yeah, that's the setup. And we are growing and selling to restaurants and families, right? So that's the state of things right now. We also developed a experience line of things. So we're doing events, corporate lunches, workshops, etc. And we found that to be very profitable as well beyond the plants. So that's, let's say, current offering. We're developing also our own proprietary software to be able to scale up and sell this in terms of farming as a service, right? So you can have your own farm, and we aim to empower communities to build their own farms and to grow their own food mostly, right? So we aim to make it as easily deployable and also as attractive to grow as possible. So also providing our growing network of clients, users, and communities with our know-how, our protocols, our distribution lines, our branding, etc. Right? And yeah, beyond that, also being able to leverage Web3, and that's where Web3 comes back, the return of the blockchain in terms of the financing side of things. So we know that CapEx can be a big hurdle for vertical farming entrepreneurs. So what if we can finance it in a decentralized fashion? For example, provide decentralized ownership or digital ownership of vertical farms for communities worldwide, where they can get a piece of farm, like a farm share, where you can get yields or profits coming from the plants, but also a solid traceability angle from the impact being generated in terms of water and energy mostly, which also pushes us to be very strict and very data-driven about our resource consumption. And we're building that on Near Protocol. They've been a solid partner for us, and of course expanding. And the aim here, and another product we're excited about, is a farm wall we're developing. So it'll be out in this year.
What's that last thing you mentioned, a farm wall?
Yeah, a farm wall. So we're aiming to develop a modular system, 3D printed out of biomaterials, of course, with the sensors and all the usability angles. So we see that as a very interesting starting point for local communities, both co-working spaces, but also regenerative villages, which are on the rise worldwide, and most effectively these places in need where they don't necessarily have the capacity to launch a mid-scale container farm or larger, but they want to start like validating the use of hydroponics with their community. So we're building that to be very accessible, decentralize the production to 3D printing, but still keep our core branding and technology. Just being able to reach more people in a faster manner.
And so talk a little bit about that because that's interesting. Like, what would an example of that look like in the real world? Like, who would be a good fit for that? And how would that be implemented? And is there like a shared ownership or shared profit stream? Like, can you outline a little bit of what that would look like?
Yeah, so I'll talk about like communities already interested on the pipeline. For example, it comes to mind a regenerative hotel in Italy that wants to install that and wants to grow their own produce on site, but the farmland that they have is not very arable, which is happening more and more, right? We're losing arable land to different climate issues. So yes, that's one. Another one, for example, it's a co-working space here in Lisbon that would like to grow their own crops for communities. And a third one that is exciting, I think it's more further ahead, but it's a project that we just started speaking with. They do sustainable bamboo housing in Myanmar. And that's the place that is really rough and there people are hungry over there for real. And if we can take that technology over there and empower them to grow their own food, then that's something amazing. Then comes the economic side of things, right? So you mentioned profit sharing and shared ownership, and that's totally what we want to do. Also assigning a value to the impact and the people, right? So that's also where this whole new movement of refi or regenerative finance that is effectively leveraging Web3 for good and for climate action can also come in terms of allowing us to break a farm wall or a hydroponic system into pieces and allowing people worldwide to have a piece of ownership of that. And if it produces a profit, which it should, or have this flat fee, service fee, for example, with the co-working space, then that can be redistributed through the owners. And on the other side, for example, with the people in need in Myanmar, we would be partnering up with organizations that are already catering to those in terms of alleviating some of their needs, but also they're looking for solutions, like effective solutions to help push that forward instead of just giving, for example, UBI, universal basic income, or just giving money to the people. They're looking for ways to channel that into effective action. So we see vertical farming and growing on site as a very powerful means to re-engage community, activate people in need, and effectively feed them, right? So that's something we're excited about.
Big, big, big goals. Big, big, big vision. Yeah, you're teaching them to fish instead of just giving them the fish, right? So I think it's really inspiring to see. And it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate. I'll come back to the blockchain and specifically the NFT piece, which is interesting in a second. In terms of the current offering, I think it's the first time I've heard about this hybrid model where you've got the LEDs, but you're also leveraging natural light as well. Can you talk a little bit about your decision to go down that model, where that was inspired from, and why you think that makes sense for what you're trying to do?
Absolutely. So yeah, it was inspired, I would say, on the fact that one of the biggest costs for vertical farms is light, right? And then most importantly, that a lot of vertical farming operations, or at least that was the alternative, plug it into the grid and using fossil fuel energy, which would defeat the purpose of what we're doing. So we knew that we had to optimize for energy, and the way we could do that, especially in a sunny place like Lisbon, is to allow the natural light to go in for photosynthesis, but also make sure that they're growing at optimal levels through LEDs, right? So yeah, we went on the hunt, let's say, for and researching for lights that were able to be dimmable and that could be dynamically adapted and adjusted to the intensity of the solar light in any given day. And then also installed our own little microgrid. So we have 10 solar panels installed that can feed almost all of our energy needs, which are mostly HVAC and the LEDs at night or in the evening. So yeah, I think first, the need to transition to sustainable energy source, then also the competitive advantage side of things, right? So we are able to diminish our cost towards that. Of course, the initial investment can rise if you install your own little microgrid or solar panels and battery system and inverter, but it definitely makes sense on the operational cost and on the sustainability side of things. So yeah, I do think that's the way to go. It's not for everyone or everywhere, right? But again, the energy is a key mix in this. It's key input. So yeah, for every farm we build, we know that we will harness clean energy and, if possible, develop our own microgrid solutions to launch these farms.
Do you envision a scenario, because I've got the blockchain thinking in the background, where these are connected together, communicating with each other, learning from each other?
Of course, yes, they have to be. Yes, every farm will be interconnected through software, right? And then the idea is also for them to share resources and optimize. So if they can be connected, and then let's say there's a surplus of produce on one side and of demand on the other, then they can be matched and like balanced out, right? And on the energy side of things, then there's also a couple of opportunities that unlock there. For example, on generating credits out of the energy that you're generating, on clean energy that you're generating. And there's different Lego blocks that can be put together to make it, more efficient, more attractive.
Yeah. And so are these also modular within the individual installations? So if you've got the two stacked, if people wanted to have like 4 or 8, or is it built in a way where you could expand pretty easily?
Yes, that's what we're building right now. Yeah, Ines, our lead architect and designer, and she's leading that side of things. So with the farm wall, the ideal is that they're also modular, but that with a smart integration of farm walls, you could potentially build a farm, and then you just need the outside structure to deploy a farm, and then you can build it as big as you want or as small as you want, right? So it's definitely something that we're thinking of, stacking them together and being able to cater either larger or mid or smaller communities.
And then, so you mentioned the financing. So far, are you currently bootstrapped, or is the financing going to be explored with what you talked about earlier with the blockchain and the NFTs?
Both, and that's a good one. So we bootstrapped until launching our MVP. So we launched our MVP, which is this test chamber, and created the brand and everything. We saw that was a fit, so we expanded from 1 to 6 systems and this concept farm last year. And for that, we did a crowdfunding campaign through Indigo. That was 2021, ending December. And then we closed it in January last year, which was fun, challenging, but it was great, successful. Then we received a couple of grants. We're raising a pre-seed round right now. It's also focusing on this, expanding the software, expanding the blockchain protocol, but also launching a couple of new farms and reaching wider communities, especially right now in Europe, the Iberian Peninsula, so Portugal and Spain, which is a more natural progression, but also developing this farm world product, which could be placed worldwide. We have closed our first couple of tickets for this pre-seed round, but I think, if there's any investor out there listening to this, we would be glad to connect. And we're also, looking for smart capital that can help us really hone on our vision and achieve our goals in a faster, more efficient manner.
Very exciting. And I'm sure there's probably several that are listening here. So I'll give you some time to have for an ask later, but talk a little bit about there's so much to cover here. So I know that there's, probably going to be people that reaching out for questions, but curious about, I saw that's something different, what you're doing with Near, and people's experience with NFTs are very mixed and people putting it in the hype category. So I'm wondering if you could sort of, in 30 seconds, kind of overview of the NFT world and why that's interesting for people that may not have even heard of the term, and then how, because of your experience with blockchain, how you're understanding that this could be something interesting for you to use and something you've experimented with.
Totally. So non-fungible tokens are just a digital representation that is unique, right? And beyond the NFTs and the terminology, I would say the reason we're building with Near and beyond and this blockchain layer is to decentralize financing and for a higher traceability of our processes, right? So blockchain at a core is a distributed technology that allows us to bring a higher degree of transparency and decentralization on different angles, right? The way we are leveraging, or we have started using it as use cases, is through these PlanFTs, right? So planets. We created these NFTs, that was last year, that equated some of our plants, some of our systems, and people could, for example, get a membership of our crops through acquiring an NFT. That was just like a first step. We did it with Mintbase and also like a marketplace within the Near protocol. Right now, we're exploring with this farm share concept, which is interesting. It won't be an NFT in the future. It would be a fungible token, a utility token, but hopefully the terminology will be out of it. So what we aim to do is just to allow people to have a piece of ownership of a new decentralized food system. right? So if you can own that, if you can take part of that, then you have incentives aligned to grow that network of a positive asset or a climate positive asset or a society positive asset, right? So if you can have a piece of vertical farming network, wouldn't you be excited? What if you could have a profit from that? What if you could help feed other people? And we see a lot of interest on that. So I would say blockchain for us is just a tool for a higher scalability going ahead, right? And there's definitely funds to be gathered from that. And eventually we aim for it to be a mechanism that allows us to scale up the vertical farming network by itself, right? So if we have a solid enough digital asset that is baked into the unit economics of the vertical farming network, then as the farming network grows, also the profit and the value of that asset. So it can effectively fund the deployment of new farms by itself, right? So yes, there's we can take an hour just on this topic, right? But what we're aiming to do here is leverage technology to be able to deploy more farms where it matters at a faster pace in a more traceable manner and with higher impact.
Very interesting. I'm sure I'll be following up with questions about that. So we are at the top of the hour. There's so much that's been covered here. I'm trying to figure out what some of the best things would be to ask or to share. But as we come to a close, I'm curious if there's a tough question you've had to ask yourself recently.
Tough question. Yes, I mean, a couple, right? So I think we constantly discuss with a team, where's our biggest impact, right? So of course we all want to save the world, we all want to do what's best. One of it was okay, are we making a difference on the carbon side of things? And answering very strongly, we saw that it wasn't the main thing, right? So the main thing is people and water. So how do we hone in on that, right? So, and being very aggressive in a way or sincere in terms of what we want to build and where our impact lies, right? So that's also coming back to the why, right? So always trying to come back to the why and articulate it with what we're building. So yes, in terms of that is re-asking the why and our purpose as a company. So yeah, that's something that we've been reframing, and we aim to build a greener food system, healthier communities, and just allow people to have a healthy life, right? Both in urban spaces, cities, but also communities in need. So that's something where we're going, and that's something that we keep asking ourselves, just not to be, fooled by ourselves or just not to be lost in the woods, right? But to see the whole picture. I think that's an important question that we should ask ourselves often.
Yeah, every day.
True.
So, given the audience of this show, lots of your peers, folks in the industry, folks curious about entering the space, looking for new opportunities in space, I've been leaving room at the end of each conversation for you. If you have a specific ask, if you have a specific message, anything you want to say to people working in this industry, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say let's keep on building and growing. I think what we do is very noble as an industry. It's been, I would say, a tough last couple of months as an industry as a whole, but it really just shows us that we need to focus on the critical and focus on what really matters and the value that we can bring to the table. So yeah, I would just encourage us to keep going. In terms of an ask, I mentioned before, if there's an investor that resonates with our mission and what we're building, we'd love to connect. And in general, for future partners, etc., we're very open as a company, as a startup. So always looking for new technology to integrate, for new partners, for new distribution channels, etc. So yeah, and always happy to help in whatever way possible. So just leaving that door open.
Well, Emiliano, I'm really happy we connected and that you reached out or I reached out. I'm not sure how these conversations sometimes start, but I think maybe on LinkedIn. But I'm really happy. It's so hard to keep up with everything that's happening. I keep saying here that when I started the show, I thought, a couple of seasons, I'll speak to everyone in the industry and it'll be fine. But, I'm just amazed by so much that's happening in this space. So I'm excited. I don't know if you're planning any of the conferences coming up this year, indoor farming conferences. Maybe we'll have a chance to connect there as well.
There's more and more, but yeah, let's keep in touch about that. Definitely looking forward to attend a couple. So yes, and yeah, I'm glad you say that there's increasing amount of people and of agents. And I think, there's a lot of room for growth. So great. And thank you, because you've been an inspiration as well since the beginning. So yeah, great to be here and thanks for everything.
So Raiz.farm, Raiz.farm is the website. We'll be sure to include that. Any of the other socials, we'll put those in the show notes so you don't have to worry about trying to write that down during this conversation. Anywhere else you want to send folks to connect with you or the company?
Yeah, I would say Twitter for those Web3 curious, refi curious, LinkedIn more on the commercial side of things, the website's there, of course, the Instagram. And yeah, like happy to share my contact to whoever's interested.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Take care. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks again to Emiliano of Raiz Farms for coming on the show and sharing his story. Really exciting to see how they're using technology and the marriage of what's happening with vertical farming. Full show notes available at verticalfarmingpodcast.com. We go to great lengths to give you a summary, timestamps, takeaways, and any resources mentioned in the show on those pages. Special thanks to our Season 7 title sponsor, Cultivated. It was great to hang out with them at Indoor AgCon. If you're looking into a vertical farm and don't know where to start or which technology would suit your needs, reach out to them today. And best of all, their service is free because they work on behalf of their partners. Learn more at cultivated.com, and that's spelled cultivatd.com. Just leave out that last E. Podcast production and marketing provided by Fullcast. Learn more at fullcast.co. and see if a podcast is right for your business. As a reminder, if you're enjoying this show, please leave us a rating and a review at ratethispodcast.com/VFP. We'll be sure to read those out on future episodes. Tune in next week for a conversation with yet another fascinating leader from the world of vertical farming. It'll be Jazz Singh of Innovation Agritech. Until we meet again, here's to your health.
Thanks for listening. To read the full show notes for this episode, which includes any links mentioned in the episode, as well as a full show transcription, visit verticalfarmingpodcast.com. There, you can sign up for our email list to be notified when new episodes are published.